My name's Gabs, and this is Mike. And it's really nice, although it's for very sad reasons, that we can sit here with you all and talk about our memories of working with Lars and knowing Lars over the years that we have during this lovely concert, where we mark his memory as much as anything else. Mike, I want to take you back. It's quite a while for you. I remember seeing Lars as a soloist in other orchestras before I joined this one. Tell us about the first time you came in contact with him and the beginning of your friendship.
Yeah, so I, like you, encountered Lars as a soloist. He worked with, every major British orchestra as a soloist before he became our music director. But just before his tenure started here, I was on tour with him and another orchestra, and we were in Bucharest. It was his birthday, and thanks to some very lax security in the console, I managed to break into his dressing room and leave him a beer from the orchestra, and so that sort of sparked our unlikely friendship.
And do you know whether he drank the beer before coming on to conduct the second half, or was it?
Oh, he was just a soloist on this occasion, but he did post a picture of himself drinking it before.
Brilliant.
Concert, yeah.
I think for me that's one of the things which maybe sets him aside from other great soloists, because I suppose maybe that's something you forget when you get to know somebody a bit, that he was a great soloist, and yet we've all had this experience of getting really close to him and really easily. That was one of his things as a human, really, wasn't it? That he was really easy to get to be friends with. I remember he had just done an introductory thing in Hall 2, which is behind the camera, for those of you at home. And I took my two daughters, who were pretty young at the time, and we went round to meet him afterwards. And he just messed around with them. You know, he was like a big kid. And since then, Maria, my eldest, called him Wriggly Lars. So that's how my relationship started with him, was this guy playing with my kids. And that seemed to me to be a mark of who he was.
Yeah, there was no hierarchy with Lars. Music directors often only make friends with certain key people in the orchestra, but it was, testament to his humanity that I felt it was an unlikely friendship we had together. I felt no right to be close friends with him from the humble seat of second oboe, but I adored him, and he always made it clear that he loved me back. It was just who he was.
I've said he was a great soloist, and we were lucky enough at RNS to work with him for quite a few years. Let's think back over some of those concerts. What did it mean when you came in the beginning of the week? What was going to happen for you musically when you knew you had a Lars week, as we would describe it?
Yeah, I felt he tore up the rule book with most composers, especially Beethoven. I'll always remember playing this Beethoven symphony like Lars would play a Beethoven sonata. So much freedom, shapes and colors instead of rigid framework. It was wonderfully refreshing. And what about you? What did you look forward to with a week with Lars?
I think it was the mixture of fear, because you never quite knew what was going to happen musically, because he was, as you say, he was very free. It was not in an out of control way, but he wanted to take you all with him, and that felt so wonderful when you were in a room and everyone was, their senses were on the tips of their fingers, and this person with this extraordinary, as we've said, he was very funny, and he was also very down to earth. But when he was in the music, there was something Herculean about it. The energy, the vibe which he brought to the music making. And I think for me it was this slight sense of worry about whether I was going to be able to go with it, and excitement of working with someone like him.
When I'm playing also, I warm up a bit, try to get into the music, try to maybe sometimes sing the music for myself a little bit, sometimes let out a big loud scream just to get some tension out. And try to make myself feel as free as possible in the situation, so that all this tension and everything doesn't make you narrow, but makes you open up.
Before he got the job, he came and did Egmont Overture with us in a week of work. And the beginning of it is a great big loud chord. And I mean, he looked like he was going to drill through the stage when he gave, and I just thought, wow, if he's willing to give all of that, this has got to be worth going with. I really felt it was a good start. It was a very exciting moment. There was that thing about appointing a music director is quite a sensitive thing for an orchestra, isn't it? Do you remember the sort of excitement going around, or what was your perspective on that time when he joined the orchestra as the music director?
I do. I remember you could hear a pin drop in that first rehearsal when he came in, and it was just that one concert, wasn't it, that convinced us. Yeah. Lars he's privately always had very, very strong opinions about how things should go. He had artists he admired, but he had very strong convictions, and I think people underestimated that because he was so polite and so diplomatic in the way he delivered them. But I could always feel that core of absolute intent of how he felt something should go, and for me there was no question that he was the right man for the job.
So Mike, we've spoken about the amazing feeling of working with Lars. What was out of all of those great moments, what was your favourite?
I mean, an impossible task, but if I have to pick one, there was an evening in Menton, or Menton, as we like to call it up here, and Lars would always play a different encore for us. If we were on a tour, he'd vary it, so we would get a different treat each night. And one night in this outdoor, beautiful setting, he played the opening of the Goldberg variations, and there was like a dog barking in the background, the wind was swirling, and it was so noisy, but there was just this amazing stillness. And what about yourself?
Well, you've almost stole my thunder, because I think encores is definitely up there, isn't it? He would start playing something beautiful, and I couldn't see what people were doing in the audience, but I could always see various of my colleagues, sometimes the usual suspects, but in the years we were working with Lars, it was more people that you'd see tears coming down. He really touched people straight away. My favourite moment was a sort of moment of personal contact, I suppose. We were recording Beethoven's first piano concerto, and it has this moment where on a modern piano you can't play all the notes that Beethoven wrote.
And he had tiny hands, Lars.
Yeah, so basically the option is you do a sort of version of it, or you employ another. And so in the end I did it. And according to the recording engineer, I am there. But every time I had any sort of conversation with Lars or any sort of contact with him, as you say, you felt it was just lovely. He was a lovely man. And that moment, in the middle of this high-stress recording situation, I get to stand next to him and actually take part in something he's doing. And that I felt really lucky for that to be the case.
And I bonded with him over lots of things, but he loved football. His dad played professionally. And
Did not know that.
Yeah, his dad was a professional footballer, and his love of music was probably only rivaled by his love for Borussia Mönchengladbach.
Right.
And there was when I remember he was practicing backstage, and he had his iPad on the piano with Champions League football playing there was a beer at that stage on the top of the piano as well, and he was just practicing this left-hand thing over and over again whilst watching his beloved Borussia Mönchengladbach. And right at the end of Lars's life, he had a video message from one of the players there, which was wonderfully touching. It was, you know, so many people surrounded Lars with love at the end, but I know that will have meant a lot to him. He did love his football and hated VAR.
As I'm sure we all do. Yeah. We're in the middle of this concert. You know, okay, we're on stage actually. I know we played some of the repertoire that we played so much with Lars since he's passed away, and I know I always feel, however good the soloist, that you miss that sense of his personality in the room, because you know it's such a great loss, and that I'm sure will be the case for many of the players on stage during this concert, is just the memory of this personality. And as we've said so many times how lucky we are, how's it going to feel for you, Mike, you know, being as you were such good friends, to play this music this evening?
Yeah, it's all, the way Lars played Beethoven, the way he played Mozart, he made it sound the only way it could sound. You can possibly imagine it sounding any better. It was devastating when we first came back to work after hearing the news. It was very hard, but it's getting easier. And Lars, like all music directors, they leave their mark on an orchestra. Yeah. And I think we still play things in his vein. You know, the last time he came in May, and we were playing the Mozart piano concerto with him, and we just played it through, and he got to the end and he said, well, that was fun. Closed the lid, and it's that familiarity. He'll never leave us musically. He would hate us to be miserable or sad when we hear that music. So it's important we keep our spirits up.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think his positivity about music and everyone being together, doing this great thing and giving of themselves.
Even right at the end, he was sleeping a lot and drifting in and out of sleep in hospital, and there was music playing on the radio in the background, and he asked for it to be turned off because he had a beautiful ballad in his head. And so he was still in his head, you know, creating music and creating his art right up to the end. And he'd you know, wake from a dream and say, you know, oh, what a beautiful piece of music, when there'd been absolute silence in the room. So that positivity remained right until his very last hours, which is, you know, testament to the
Yeah.
man he was.